Commit to Wealth Nation, welcome to the Commit to Wealth podcast. I'm your host, Juan Vargas. Today on the show, we have Rod Khleif. Rod is a top real estate entrepreneur and philanthropist. He has owned over 2,000 homes and apartments, built over 24 businesses throughout his 40-year career. He's the host of the top-rated and very popular podcast called Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing, and he's the author of How to Create Lifetime Cash Flow Through Multifamily Properties. So, Rod Khleif, welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you, brother. It's such a treat to be on your show. You know, it's just kind of funny how things go full circle. I remember our conversations in the past, and it's just really impressed with what you've accomplished and what you've got going here, my friend.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You know, it's an honor to have you here on the show, and you have quite a big of a audience, and you've shared your story many times, and I want you to also share your story here with my audience, and talk about your background, how it all started.
Sure. Happy to. Yeah. The show has been nuts. I think we're about to hit 4.5 million downloads, which is just crazy. But it started when I immigrated to this country 6 years ago. And 6 years ago, when I was 6. I'm sorry.
There you go.
I need to have more of my coffee. So it started. I immigrated when I was 6 with my brother Albert and my mother's Vancha, and we ended up in Denver, Colorado. Didn't have a lot of money, struggled financially. But my mom had a great work ethic. I had to wear clothes from the Goodwill literally through junior high school. We ate expired food, drank powdered milk. I know a lot of people had it harder than we did, but I knew I wanted more. And like I said, my mom had a great work ethic, and she babysat kids so we'd have enough money to eat. And when I was 14 with her babysitting money, she bought the house across the street from us for about $30,000. And then when I was 17, about to graduate from high school, she told me it had gone up $20,000 while she slept. And I'm like, what? I'm getting into real estate. So I got into real estate when I turned 18. I got my real estate broker's license actually right when I turned 18. You could do it with education back then. You need experience now. But I started selling real estate. I was going to be rich in real estate. So my first year, I made about $8,000. My second year, I maybe made about $10,000. But my third year, I made well over $100,000. And so what happened between year 2 and year 3? So what happened is I started working with a guy that taught me about mindset and how really mindset is 80 to 90% of your success in anything. Sure, you need to know the real estate knowledge or the business knowledge if you're going to do a business, the technical knowledge, but that's actually the smallest percentage of somebody's recipe for success. 80 to 90% of your success in anything is your mindset and your psychology. And so that's what opened up my eyes. And, fast forward to today, like you said, I've owned over, a couple thousand houses, multiple apartment buildings in 3 states. In 2006, my net worth went up $17 million while I slept instead of my mom's 20,000. And, when that happens, you get a big head, you think you're a real estate god. Well, I thought I was a real estate god. And when that happens, God or the universe or whatever you believe will give you a smackdown. Well, that smackdown for me was 2008. I got absolutely crushed in 2008 and lost $50 million. I call them seminars. I don't call them failures because they're always learning experiences and growth experiences. I think the most successful people on the planet fail their way to success. And like you mentioned, I've had 24 businesses. Several have been worth tens of millions of dollars, but most of them have been spectacular, flaming seminars. And so, but again, what got me, I thought I was set for life here in Florida. I had 800 houses. I had some apartment complexes, and I thought I was set for life. I thought 80 million baby boomers getting old and getting cold would make Florida recession proof. Well, I was wrong. and it all crashed and burned. I'm back now, but it was a painful seminar. And, sometimes, let me just say this. It took a lot to come back from that because I was set for life. And if you'd like, I can talk about the mindset that it took to come back from losing $50 million because, that might add value to some of your listeners because it really, I think a lot of people face setbacks. They face failures, as it were, or they're afraid to take action even initially. They get comfortable, or they get caught up in fear or limiting beliefs, and they never take action on their dreams. So if you'd like, I can talk for a minute about some of the strategies I use with my own coaching students and my live events to get people over the hump.
Yeah, definitely. Because, losing that amount, 50 million, that's gigantic. So, for you to go, from where you were at one point to rock bottom, basically. And then,
Right.
there's definitely a psychological, transition that you have to go through to be able to kind of get back to the point where you're at today. So yeah, just, go ahead and talk about that a little.
Yeah, sure. So really the bottom line is you have to know what it is you want, and you have to know why you want it. So what I do is just take me a few minutes to describe this process. What I do when I teach people how to do this is I tell you, and those of you listening, might want to take a note or two. What you want to do is you pick a time when you've got like an hour at least uninterrupted, and you have high energy. You want to make sure you don't do it after a big meal or anything like that. Make sure you're well hydrated, but sit down and write down everything you could possibly ever want in life. Okay. All the stuff, the houses, the boats, the cars, the jet skis, the planes, whatever it is. Take the lid off your brain and imagine that if you write it down, you're going to get it, which is not outside the realm of reality. I will tell you, when I lived in Denver, I knew I always wanted to live on a beach. I knew it, and I thought about it for 20 years, and I ultimately ended up building this $8 million mansion on a Gulf to Bay lot, meaning I had the beach on one side and my boats on the back side of this island, because I visualized it. But back to goals. So write down everything you could ever possibly want in life. And the big things, the little things. How much money do you want in the bank? How much money net income do you want from this real estate business? And again, don't limit yourself. We are only limited by our own brains. So, when you write it down, what it does is it triggers your reticular activating system, which is that filter in your brain that filters out what it thinks is important to you. I'll give you an example of that. Like right now, if you're listening to me, you're not thinking about your feet. But now that I mentioned it, you can think about how your feet feel in your shoes. But it's the same example would be, when you first buy a vehicle, a car or a truck, you never really notice them, but then you see them everywhere, and they were there before. But that's your reticular activating system. So writing it down triggers that and helps your brain get you focused towards what's going to get you to those outcomes. So anyway, you've written down everything you can think of. And by the way, if you're analytical, don't stop and analyze what you're writing down. Just keep writing till you can't think of another thing. Then add two pieces. One of them is write down what you want to learn. Not just the stuff. Write down what you want to learn. I'm going to learn how to fly a helicopter. I'm going to learn how to play the drums. My wife bought me a drum set. I'm going to learn how to play the drums. So what do you want to learn? Write that down. Also, write down who you want to help. I bought my parents a house and a car and took them on cruises. Who do you want to help? Who do you want to do something for? Maybe it's your community, whatever it is. Write it down because this is everything you want to do, be, or have. It's not just the stuff. And then once you can't think of another thing, then it's not real until it's measurable. So you got to put a time limit on it. So go by write a number by every one of the things that you wrote down, every one of your goals. Write a number, how many years it's going to take you to achieve it, a 1, a 3, a 5, a 10, or a 20. Remembering that as human beings, we'll overestimate what we can accomplish in a year and massively underestimate what we can do in 5 or 10 years. Like the thought of me living on the beach was unthinkable when I lived in Denver and didn't have any money and Goodwill clothes, but I made it happen. And so, take the lid off your brain. Remember what I just said about timelines, but put a time on there. Then the next thing I want you to do is pick your number one goal. The juiciest goal on that list. Now, if there are 2 or 3 that are equally exciting, just pick one because it won't matter for what we're going to do next. But take that number one goal, write it on a separate sheet of paper. Then pick your top 3 one-year goals, write those on a separate sheet of paper. So you've got 4 goals on a separate sheet of paper. Now, this is where most people stop. In fact, most people don't even go this far. And if people spend more time planning Christmas or a birthday than they do designing their lives. So, you're way ahead of the pack here. But then once you've got those 4 goals off to the side, you need to write a paragraph for each one why it's an absolute must, not a should, for you to reach it. Things like, so I can show my family what success looks like, so I can, make my spouse proud. And words are very powerful. Use emotionally charged words like incredible and massive and amazing and things like that, because the words are very powerful. So write down why it's an absolute must, so I can do whatever I want, wherever I want, whenever I want, with whoever I want. Whatever it is for you, write it down. Now, once you've written a paragraph for each goal, why it's an absolute must, put some pain in there. Because as human beings, we'll do more to avoid pain than gain pleasure. So you want to put things like, if you don't get the goal, so I don't feel like a failure, so I don't live a life of regret, so I don't, so my spouse doesn't see me as a failure. Make it painful, because again, we will do more to avoid pain. And this is the fuel, my friends. This is the fuel that would drive you to push through fear, or even more powerful, to get uncomfortable. Because if you're comfortable, you got to get uncomfortable to build that life of your dreams. So this is the fuel that'll do that. So put some pain in there. And then the last thing, which is really important, is get pictures of your goals. Go on Google and find pictures that resonate with you and put them around you. I've got a planner, a paper planner, and I show this sometimes. I know you're doing this on iTunes, but we're also video recording it. So if anybody sees the video of this, they can see this. But I've got it on my desk here, and in the back of this thing, I've got pictures that have been in here for almost 20 years. The first pictures are my gratitude pictures, because everything starts from a place of gratitude. You have to be grateful. So keep that in mind, my friends. Make sure you operate from gratitude. So these are pictures of my kids when they were very young. Then I've got pictures of the houses that I wanted, which I got, okay? I got these, and pictures of houses that look just like these. I've got, a couple $100,000 worth of watches. I got that. The Lamborghini. I got a Lamborghini. Well, way before, I ended up getting it. I had a picture of the Rolls Royce, all this stuff that doesn't even matter to me anymore, frankly, because I had pictures of it. So let me take you back to how I used pictures. When I turned 18, I got a 4-door Granada, and it was the ugliest thing you ever seen. I thought you needed a 4-door car to show people houses, because I was a real estate broker. Okay. So, but the guy I worked with had a Corvette, and he let me drive it. Now, again, I just threw some exotic, the fancy cars out there. I need you to know that this is not me bragging, because this stuff doesn't even interest me anymore. But these are great examples to inspire you to do something similar. So I got this guy let me drive his Corvette, which was a really important piece of this whole goal setting. And what I'm going to talk now is add a little kind of an aside to the goal setting, which is visualizing to manifest what you want in life. Like, I visualized that house on the beach for 20 years. Okay. But so I'm driving this Granada. I hated it. My friend let me drive his Corvette, and that experiential component is really important. If you want a car, go drive it. If you want a house, go look at it on an open house. Go experience it. But anyway, so I got a picture of that Corvette, and I put it on out of a magazine. This is way before the internet. I got a picture out of a magazine of a Corvette, and I put it on the visor of that 4-door Granada. Within a year, I had a Corvette. Then this was when the TV show Magnum PI was out. And this is way before your time, Juan, but it was a TV show about this detective. His name, and the actor was Tom Selleck, and he drove this awesome Ferrari 308, this red Ferrari, and I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. So I got a picture of that actual car out of a magazine and put it on the visor of my Corvette. Within a year or two, I had a Maserati that looked just like it. The last example is the Lamborghini. I'm the guy that always wanted a Lamborghini, and I had the posters on the wall with the bikinis and washing the cars and all, Lamborghinis. Yeah, that's me. And I also, told my son I was thinking about getting one, and he collected exotic models, and he had a model of the exact same color and style that I ended up with. But I'm telling you, pictures work. Okay. So go out and get pictures, put them where you're going to see them. If you look around my office here right now where I'm talking to you, I've got pictures of the things that are important to me now. I've got vision boards that I use for the different things that I want in my life now, because they work. Okay. And so just make sure you incorporate gratitude as you are thinking about these things as if you already have them. That's a very, very powerful way to get them into your life. And I know some of your analytical ones are going, oh, this is too foofy for me. And I'm telling you, if you do, you're making a mistake, because this stuff absolutely works. Jim, in fact, one last piece, Jim Carrey, a great example, wrote himself a check for $10 million before he had anything. And he cashed a check for $10 million for his first movie. So, and that type of visualization really works. In fact, Olympic athletes, they're trained now to always visualize the race before they do it. The Russians started doing it. Now they all do it because it's so effective. So,
yeah, no, does it work? It definitely does work. I do the same thing, Rod. I have pictures here in this office. I mean, right here in front of me, pictures, where it shows gratitude, family pictures, we want to be more involved, throughout the world and, helping others and, have pictures of that, giving back, that's really what it's about. And, so yeah, for those of you guys out there listening, I mean, does it sound like a bunch of baloney? It may sound like that, but it really is not. Write down your goals. Like you said, a lot of these principles, you'll find them like in Think and Grow Rich. That's one of the books that's like is powerful. And I'm actually listening to the book again, and this is my second time listening to it. But it's it's a very powerful book that also shares a lot of great principles that similar to what you're sharing. So
right.
It works. It works. Bottom line, it works. So Rod, I want to talk about obviously it took a lot for you to kind of get back to your point now. I guess let's talk about the actual principles in the apartment world or the real estate world. So you had 2,000 homes and apartments. How many of those were single family versus multifamily?
So basically what it was when I crashed and burned, the 2,000 is over my lifetime so far. Okay. When I crashed and burned, I had 800 houses here in Florida. I had multiple apartment complexes. And the reason that it didn't hold together, I'm not like totally against owning single family for long-term holds, but the reason that my model didn't work was I had 800 houses that were 2 hours one direction and 2 hours the other direction and everywhere in between. So it was very logistically difficult to cash flow. And let me tell you why. First of all, Florida has no state income tax. So the taxes here are much higher, property taxes, as well as a lot of these properties were in flood or wind zones because I'm along the coasts, which added to the insurance costs. So that impacted cash flow. And then, I want you to imagine, like, if I sent a maintenance guy to one of my apartment complexes, we would stockpile parts there because they have all the same plumbing, same, HVAC, same hot water heater, same appliances, same locks, all that stuff similar. So you could stockpile a lot of parts. Well, if I send someone to a house and let's say it's an hour away, and so they get there, it takes an hour to get there. They see what's needed. Then they've got to find it. And every house is different. Every part in every house is different. They've got to go find a Lowe's or a Home Depot. It might take 30 minutes to drive there, drive back another hour. And then they get into the repair and they discover that they need more parts, which happens all the time. And then they go back, and what would take 30 minutes in an apartment complex ends up taking all day in a house. And you multiply that times 800. And I had C- houses. They weren't in the hood, but they were working C+ to C-, just C in general, really. But a lot of turnover. Turnover is very, very expensive. And during 2008, a lot of the boom here was construction related. So a lot of my residents were in the construction field. And those of you that were in 2008 know that just dried up overnight. So they had no source of income. And so it was just a recipe for disaster. But the reason I started my podcast and the reason I wrote my book was what was astounding to me was although my single family wasn't cash flowing, my multifamily was. It pulled back, but it still made money. And so, that was my message, that if you're going to buy and hold long-term, go for multifamily. Even if you're young and you haven't bought anything yet, go buy a plex, for God's sakes. Go buy a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex. Live in one unit. It's called house hacking, and live for free in most cases, or very, very reduced housing expenses. And I've interviewed guys on my show that have built multi-million-dollar portfolios one plex at a time. But the point there is, if you're going to buy and hold real estate, I highly recommend you do multifamily instead of single family. That's my opinion based on my own experiences. But if you're going to do single family, then for the love of God, make sure they're very they're very close to each other geographically. So you don't have the same, at least logistical issues that I encounter. Because, even showing them and inspecting them and all of that was very cumbersome. Now, see, again, I was focused on value. I even shared that in my story so far. I was focused on the fact that my net worth went up $17 million and I could do no wrong, but I didn't have my eye on the ball with cash flow. And so, that's why the subtitle of my book, and by the way, I'll give it to your listeners for free. They can just text the word ROD to 41411 and we'll send them a free copy. And it's really good. It's 200 pages. It's like a textbook. In fact, I've got a copy right here. But the subtitle is The New Rules of Real Estate Investing, i.e. the new rules are focus on cash flow. I have coaching students that call me and say, well, I found this deal that appraised for $3 million 2 years ago and I can get it for $2 million. I'm like, I don't care. Show me the numbers because the value is irrelevant.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
And so I would say, basically to sum it up on what you just said, a couple of different lessons here is one is location, right? Yeah. I think, location would be, if they're too spread apart, you're working on single family, then, it's not going to be ideal. You want to, be in a better part of town. Like that, you can attract better tenants. But even more importantly, I would say that make sure that you're looking for cash flow, make sure that you're cash flowing, and, you're being conservative on your numbers. You're not necessarily banking on the appraisal. A lot of guys do that. They bring on the appraisal and that's what they're hoping for. It doesn't mean anything. You want the cash flow, like you said, and that's that's the only thing that should be important, really.
Well, in the single family world, value plays a higher role. If you're in the flipping and wholesaling game and all that, but in multifamily, the value is based on the income anyway. It's based on a multiple of the net operating income. So that should really be your focus as you get and become a long-term hold investor.
Got it. So Rod, I know that you coach a lot of students. You have students throughout the nation. So what markets are they more, choosing? Are they looking at more primary markets, secondary markets?
No, definitely secondary.
Okay.
I have students doing deals in Indianapolis, all over Ohio, Texas, of course, where you are. Let's see. Other parts of Indiana. Actually, we're looking at deals in Texas and Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Eastern Tennessee. Pretty much all over, but definitely not the big major metros.
Right. What is the size, the purchase, price, the size of units that these guys are going after,
all over the board. Everybody has a courage muscle. Okay. I've got guys working on 500 plus units, right? I've got a coaching student that's got money hard on 500 and I think 50 some units in Atlanta. I've got a coach, deal of 350 units in Texas, in Houston, actually, where you are. And guys that are just doing 6 to 9 units. So, really people, and those of you listening, there's the law of the first deal. Get that first deal and then you realize that it's not as hard, as intimidating as you think it is. The first one always takes the longest. It's always the hardest. But once you get that first one, they're like dominoes. And it's a natural progression for people to start a little smaller and then go larger. Unless you're Grant Cardone, he goes big all the way, all the time. But I've had him on my show a couple of times. He's a riot. But the point is do whatever you have the courage to do. And you will build that courage muscle. And it really is a muscle, like any other muscle. You build it as you become more competent in this business. You build your confidence in this business. And then that equates to your ability to influence people. And so I would just tell you, if you're listening, just get started. And if you have to start with a duplex, start with a duplex. No worries. Don't have any shame about that. So you're only limited by your belief systems. You're only limited by what you believe you can do. And sometimes people need to progress through that process as it relates to larger and larger deals.
Yeah. A lot of times it's just simply looking in the mirror and, you sometimes become, you kind of get in your own way sometimes, and that's,
Sure.
that's
Or
really,
they're
really
driving through life with using the rear view mirror, like reliving past setbacks and
you cannot
failures.
do that.
And you can't do that. I was blessed to meet Sarah Blakely, the billionaire owner of Spanx, and she talked about failure, and she started with $5,000 and now she's a billionaire. She was just on Forbes a couple months ago on the cover. But I remember something she told me that your listeners, I think, will appreciate, and that is her father at the dinner table used to ask her and her brother, "What have you failed at today?" Isn't that an awesome question? Don't fear failure, my friends. Fear being in the same place that you are right now a year or two from now. That's what you should fear. Don't fear failure, because you'll recover. If failure is a seminar, the only time it's really failure is if you fail to learn, you fail to grow. But that's very unusual. Normally, you will learn and grow, and you'll be better the next time. I mean, I'm back to the success I had before. I've got this gorgeous compound on the water, and 6 buildings, and I mean, it's magnificent. It's like a park. I've got a guest house. I've got a media building with a theater and a conference center above it, a main guest house. And because God's got a sense of humor, I can see my old mansion across the bay there that I used to own. I get to look at it out my backyard. But the point is, it always comes around faster because you know more. You rebuild faster because you've learned and you've grown. So, like I said, don't fear failure.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, Rod, what are a couple of things that guys can do in today's market?
It's a tough market. It's a tough market. It's a tight market, and a lot of mistakes being made right now. Okay, so I would tell you, if you're listening, first off, educate yourself. You're doing it's great that you're listening to Juan. There's some. I've got my podcast. Read my free book, and there's a lot of free stuff out there. But educate yourself, because dabblers in this business get crushed, especially in this hot market. That's number one. But this is probably the best time to learn this business. And I'll say that because we are going to have a pullback. We're going to have a contraction. Real estate goes in cycles. Now, it's not something to fear. It's just something to be aware of. In fact, I was just reading in Fortune that was talking about the end is near, and all the reasons why they believe a pullback is coming, and economic indicators and things of that nature, that national debt and very high business debt right now. But again, it's not something to fear, because with crisis comes opportunity. And if you're learning this business right now, and this is a team sport, by the way, this business is a team sport. You need to build a team. And that's what's so great about multifamily real estate. You don't need a lot of money if you're buying commercial multifamily, meaning 5 units or more, because they look at the team. They don't look. It's not like when you buy a house, they look at you. They're looking at the whole team. So, to satisfy the experience requirement and the net worth requirement and the liquidity requirement, you can do that with your team. So you can and you can do that with one person on your team. So if you align yourself with people that have done this business and use what's called a sponsor to get you into that first deal, then it's on your resume and you're off to the races. But, don't be afraid to give up pieces of your first deal in this business to get started. That's how every big syndicator and investor gets started. And so anyway, I went off on a side.
No, it's good. I couldn't agree more, Rod, because, if folks are, kind of getting involved, in today's market, even if you don't buy anything, at least you're learning the game.
Build the relationships. Build the relationships. Get competent in the business. So when the market, and if you're out there finding investors and people with money, you're telling anybody that'll hold still long enough what it is you do, and you're building this network. When the market corrects, you're going to be set to really capitalize on it. If you listen to my podcast, there's almost like a theme to it. If somebody's got over 1,000 units, they started in 09, 10, or 11. Right after the crash, and they ramped exponentially because of the opportunities that happen right after a contraction. So again, if you're learning this business right now, it's an incredible time. And if I can do a quick plug, I have a live events. I'd love to have you come to one of my live events. My next one's in January in Tampa, but you just go to multifamilybootcamp.com, and they're very, very good. They're 3 days of me on stage. There's no outside speakers trying to sell anything. but I don't care if it's me or someone else. Go learn, okay? Because this is the greatest time to learn, build the relationships, and tell your investors or people with money that, you know, to get ready because it's coming, you know, and prepare them for it, because it's just going to be an incredible opportunity when it happens.
Yes, and there's a lot of people right now that they look back and they're like, man, if only if I would have known about it, you know, if I would have known about, you know, real estate, if I would have been involved in real estate back in, you know, 09, 2010,
Right.
you know,
Right.
who knows what I could have been like now. And
Right.
so this is going to be an opportunity, you know, that's going to be coming up. We don't know when it's going to happen, but,
Right.
you know,
Could be a couple years. You
cyclical.
know, some people say it's already started. Who knows?
Who knows?
If I knew that, I'd be in the billions already. But it is going to happen because it goes through cycles, just like seasons. Yeah, life, you go through seasons in life, and if you're prepared, watch out. I mean, you will exponentially capitalize on the opportunity.
Got it. So, Rod, it is time for our Nuggets of Wealth, and these are questions that I ask every guest every week, and hopefully they are able to pick up a couple different nuggets from them.
Sure.
What is a good tool, source, or platform that you use almost every day that can also help others?
Well, if you have a business, I love Slack. We just started using it, and it eliminates all the interoffice email. I'm just loving it. You know, of course, I use Outlook religiously, but the latest, you know, bell of the ball for us has been Slack.
So, what is Slack exactly?
Slack is like an interoffice communication system. It's you can do video conferencing like you and I are doing here on Zoom. It's similar to Zoom or Skype, where you can video conference, you can message people, you can create tasks for people. It's just a great communication platform. So you eliminate the hundreds of emails between you and your team.
Got it.
And it's, you know, it's one of the fastest growing IT companies out there right now as well. It's one of those unicorns, they call them, in Silicon Valley, but we've really been impressed with it. So.
Okay. Nice. How do you best manage your time? I mean, you're doing all kinds of different things. Like, you know, I'm sure your schedule is like just busy.
Yeah,
And
well,
full.
I teach my students like a weekly planning process, and I can probably say it here in a couple minutes. I don't know how much time we've got, but if you'd like, I can share it with you. It's a 5-step process. Okay.
Sure.
So what I suggest you do is you must plan. You have to plan. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You guys have heard that before, but you have to plan once a week. And what I suggest you do is pick a time a day that and you do this the same time of day, same day once a week, so it becomes a habit. And if you do it for 90 days, you'll do it the rest of your life. And the first thing that I recommend you do is you take a look at what you got done the week before and you celebrate it. Because, you know, I will tell you, and let me share this with you real quick. You know, I built that house on the beach, and a month after I built it, I'm floating in the pool. My family's inside sleeping. It's night. The pool's changing colors, just magnificent. I'm looking up at this giant testament to my ego that I built to prove to the world I was good enough, which is the truth. That's why I did it. But I got depressed. And I'm like, how can I be depressed? I accomplished this incredible goal. You know, I'm successful. I've got a family. I've got all the toys, all the stuff. But what I realized was, and this ties into goal setting, which is why I wanted to bring it up, is that you should never, there were two things going on actually. One was you should never achieve a big goal without having other goals lined up behind it. Because like the good book says, without a vision, the people perish. You have to have a vision for the future. The second thing that I want to share real fast, but actually there's three things here. The second thing is goals don't equal happiness. Progress equals happiness. Okay. As you progress and grow, that's what equals happiness. Goals will pull you to, and they will motivate you, but the happiness is short-lived. After you have it, it's like, okay, now what? You have to be progressing. And that's why, and then let me just mention one other quick thing, because I don't want to forget. There's a big difference between, this was the other thing that was going on back then. There's a big difference between achievement and fulfillment. I had achieved, but I wasn't happy. I was focused on rod. And so that was the year I went and saw Tony Robbins, changed my life, you know, and in all kinds of ways. Highly recommend, go see him if you can. But he fed families for the holidays. And so I came back from his event and I decided I'd feed some families. And to make a long story short, changed my life. I've now fed 60,000 children for the holidays. We've done, big baskets of food. I've done backpacks filled with school supplies, probably over 10,000 of those to local families, probably over 10,000 teddy bears to local police departments for the officers to keep in their vehicles, and to when they encounter a child that's been traumatized. And that's fulfillment, giving back. So I invite your listeners. I know you want success if you're listening to Juan, and its success is empty without fulfillment. So find a way to give back. It doesn't have to be as big as I do. It can just be adopt a family or help an elderly person or just do something for someone else, because that gives your life richness. But back to my, sorry, I went off another side road there. But back to my planning. So the first thing you do is you celebrate what you got done, because progress equals happiness. The second thing I highly recommend you do for 5 minutes is you journal. Just journal some magic moments in your life, especially if you have children. Write down anything amazing that's happened so you don't forget, and you have a gift for yourself and a gift for them. The third thing is a one-time thing that you're going to do. You're going to create a list of everything that's important in your life. First, you start with the people, your spouse, your family, your children, list them, then all your friends, and then list every high-level piece of your core job that you're responsible for. For example, if you have a business, sales, marketing, IT, but if you're working for someone, there are high-level things that you have to think about and remember to think about once a week. List those things at a high level. Again, shouldn't be more than about 10 things. Then list all the things in this real estate business that you need to do to learn this business. Take a course, build relationships with people for your team, evaluate deals, go out and look at deals. And all these high-level things for the real estate business. So on one sheet of paper, you've got everything that's important in your life. Now, I do it on a Word document. You can, if you're a handwriter, do it on paper, but you can do it on a Word document. I just change the date every week. But the next thing that you do, and I call it my weekly must list. So at the bottom of this weekly must list is this thinking list or this impact list. So you look at that list once a week, and you're looking at your whole life. So nothing gets left behind, okay? So you're in complete balance. And then you pick what you're going to accomplish that week, just that week, not the month, the year. This is not goal setting. This is just your weekly tasks. So what you're going to commit to that week, you write it down. Then the last step is, if you look at that list, there's always 20% of it that will get you further. That it's called the Pareto principle. It's proven principle that there's always a small amount of things on your list to do that will get you 80% further along than the other things. Figure out what those things are and actually block time for those things. Okay? That's how you become effective. Now, I did that really fast. I do it a lot longer in my course and my coaching, but as an incredible process that will really free you up, so that you're not, when you're with your kids, you're not distracted. When you're with your spouse, you're not distracted, because you thought of your whole life, and you know that everything's covered, so that you can give them the time and the energy that they deserve. And you stay focused and effective, and you execute effectively.
No, Rod, I appreciate you sharing that. And that's very important, for anybody, for those of us like myself, I have a family, I have kids. So that's very important for me to be able to do that. So, sometimes I tend to, continue my day in my schedule, even though I'm done with some things, but there's always something else that you can be doing. So I tend to do that sometimes, and you tend to kind of ignore your kids sometimes. And really, you got to think about, what is it that you're doing this in the first place for? You're doing it because you want to provide better for them. You want to do something for them, right? So
thank you.
They're the ones that you kind of ignore at the end,
Yep.
So I love that you were able to share that. So
yeah, and let me add one thing. They would rather have your total presence and focus for 15 minutes than an hour of you distracted on the phone. Same with your spouse, especially a female spouse. A woman wants your total attention. So if you find that that's happening, where you're not giving them the time they deserve, by gosh, you should be blocking time for them. Say, sweetheart or kids, you've got me for an hour. I am yours. I'll roll around on the floor, whatever. After that, I got to work. And they will respect that. I'm serious. And I'll tell you, as an aside, my biggest regret in life was I'd come home to that big, giant mansion, that testament to my ego, and I'd play with my kids every night, but I was distracted. And that's my biggest regret in life. I mean, my kids will tell you I was a great dad, but I didn't live up to my own expectations. So those of you listening with small kids, please heed that. Success is empty, if you forget what's most important.
don't take it for granted. Basically, your
Right.
kids are going to be kids for just a short time, and they're a big
Right.
reason. They're a big reason why we have our why. So I appreciate you sharing that. So Rod,
Right.
at the end of your life, how do you want to be remembered?
I want to add value to as many people as I possibly can. Bottom line, I have a lot of statements on my wall and in my exercise room, and one of them is I've helped thousands of people. And that's how I want to be remembered. I want to be, life is about giving back, and the more value you add, the more comes back to you. I want to be remembered for adding value to people. I've got a wall behind me with hundreds of thank you cards from students and people that listen to my podcast, literally hundreds. And I get almost one a day, an email or a card a day. And that adds a richness to your life you can't possibly imagine.
Got it. Yeah, that's great, Rod.
Thank you.
So where can Commit to Wealth Nation go to contact you and find out more about you? And, they want to reach out to you.
If you're interested in multifamily, I've got a Facebook group. It's got like 22,000, almost 22,000 people in it. Go to multifamilycommunity.com, and it's a direct link to that group. And, remember, you're the 5 people you hang around with. So be around people that want more, that empower you and motivate you and pull you, not the ones that are afraid that will try to limit your dreams. So that's a great place to do that. If you are interested in my training is very inexpensive. It's multifamilybootcamp.com, and I do 4 events a year, and I love it. And you'll see what people say. And if you go to that Facebook group and just put in boot camp, you'll see what people say unsolicited about the experience. Because I focus on mindset too, which people really resonate with because that's so important. But my website, rodkhleif.com, has got lots of videos and books and things like that are free. So it's RODKHLEIF as in Frank.com.
Sweet. Okay. Well then, Rod, it was a pleasure to have you on. You gave us a ton of information, a ton of value that, I'm sure that my audience can pick up, and, both psychologically, mentally, and even tactically, in the real estate space. So I really appreciate your time, and, thank you so much. And look forward to, joining you in a boot camp here shortly too, as well.
Buddy, anytime, my friend. Would love to have you guys there. Thanks for having me on. This is a lot of fun.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.